Okay, welcome back to the shop. I'm sitting in a chair in front of my toolbox, in front of my lathe. We've been working on the vacuum system and the vacuum chuck system for a few days. And basically I was having a problem and needed to fix it. And the problem is even though it seemed like I was getting good vacuum and good number of inches of mercury, 25, out to the end of the rod, the hollow rod that goes through the headstock, I don't think I was getting good results. So what I basically did is I went back and I reread all my instructions and everything. And I determined that one of the things I did not do properly, this was my fault, it was nobody else's fault but mine, was I put the nut on the rod with Loctite red. Careful, put it on the rod properly, put it in there. Put the bearing up, put the other nut on with Loctite on it and everything else. What I didn't do is I didn't put any Loctite on the inside of the bearing, so I didn't get a good seal of the inside race of the bearing on the rod. And I also didn't torque down the two nuts that sit on the inner face of the bearing. And so I think I was getting leaks through there. Logically, I probably wasn't getting as much leaks through there as possible, but I did that. So I did some investigations and other things. I talked to Bob Leonard. He made a couple of suggestions, said that I probably have some problems in other areas. And I did some more research online. And when I did that research online, I really heard something from someone who was very much, I don't know if he's an expert, but he certainly knows a lot more about vacuum systems than I do. And he says one of the things you need to do is test all of the parts of your setup to make sure that you know where and if you are losing air or getting a vacuum leak all the way out to the end of your system. So that's what I set out to do this morning, is test it all the way through the end of the system to determine if my setup had a problem in it or if I had some other problem. So this is what I basically did. So you can see behind me I have my vacuum system on my little dolly and a vacuum gauge. Right now you can't see where the vacuum gauge is, but the right hand side of the gauge is 0. That would be about the 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock position. And the left hand side of the gauge at about 7 o'clock or 7:30 would be 30 inches of mercury, which I'm not going to get to. So 25 inches of mercury is right here. 9 o'clock position on this side. 5 inches of mercury is at 3 o'clock or on this side. So as I go through this test, I'm going to step through what I did and the problems I ran into, and then hopefully that will help you down the line. I've got my hose hooked up and everything else. So I did reseat the bearings, put new Loctite on and everything else. That's all there. The nut sticks out just a little bit, which means the end of the rod sticks out just a little bit past the front of the faceplate. And if I turn that on, And I'm going to go ahead and zoom in. Right now it's open, so it's 0. It's not registering hardly, it's registering just a little bit, but really not registering anything. If I take my finger and close off the pipe, what you're going to see is 25 inches of mercury. That's using my finger. So if I take a piece of the foam pad and put on there, what I'm going to get is a little bit, 25 inches of mercury, maybe even a little bit better than that. So I know I'm good to the end of my rod. Now what I'm going to do is take a little piece of wood that I have. This is just a arts and crafts wood for doing photography and everything, and I'm going to put it on the outside. So you can see with that I'm pulling about 23 and a half inches of mercury. This is not particularly great wood, so it's going to pull some air through there. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this bowl. I'm going to put this bowl that I turned some time ago. It's oak. It's got some hairline cracks in it, but it's flat across the top. Not greatly flat, but it is flat across the top. So what I'm going to do is put it on the lathe by hand, and it gets almost nothing. I'm going to take my foam collar, put it on the lathe, and I get 1 or 2 pounds of pressure. So far, I still haven't proved anything. So what I'm now going to do is take a bowl that I turned and finished. This is actually the first bowl I ever made. It's up on the shelf. It's an oak bowl made out of 3 pieces of red oak, and it's finished and everything. It's got a flat top on it. I'm going to put it on the chuck over here. I'm going to put it on the chuck by itself. Gets 2 or 3 inches of mercury, and the bowl will not hold itself on there. If I use foam, as you can see, I'm now getting about 7 or 8 inches of mercury, and that bowl is being held on the chuck pretty well. That bowl is being held on the chuck pretty well. Do some turning on that, probably taking the foot off of it without too much problem, and I don't have it centered at the moment, but that seems to say that my system is better than I think it is. However, it's still not up where I think it should be and where I believe it should be. So, what I needed to do was simply this. Put my stuff off to the side here, my test tools. So what I decided to do was this. I built myself a little piece that is there for testing purposes only. It's a piece of scrap board. It's basically 5 inches long, maybe two and a half inches wide. It's about 3/4 of an inch thick and everything. And what I did is I took a little, I think this is about a 1.5 inch PVC junction to be able to put two pieces of pipe together. I checked, one end is flat, the other end has some embossing on it, so I sanded the end with the embossing of the letters on it flat so it'd have a good seal. I took and I hot glued it to the board. Just wanted to do it nice, simple, straightforward. I then took a piece of foam, cut it, glued it on the top of the adapter, glued the edges down, and I'm going to use this as my test piece. And this is what I would suggest anybody who's building one of these systems do. Build yourself a test piece like this so you can verify all the way through to your faceplate and everything else what's happening. Now again, when I go to put this on there, this is not, I've not used a parting tool to put a hole in the board. I haven't put the PVC in there. I haven't glued it on there. It is simply the PVC adapter with the foam pad on it. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn it on. I'm going to put it on there, and then we're going to check the meter. All right, so I'm going to take my little test adapter. There's what it looks like. Nothing fancy. Pretty straightforward. Again, hot glue around the edge, hot glue around the top, foam on the top. I'm going to turn this on, and I'm going to put it up there. That's not very big around, so it will wobble just a little bit because I'm pressing way out here on the side, but it's being held on there by itself. And what you can see is I have about 22 or 23 inches of mercury on my system. As you can see, if I readjust it and put it back on there, where I think I got it on there just a little bit better, it's right at about 22, 22 and a half, maybe 23 inches of mercury. So what all this means is that I checked it down here at the fittings on the vacuum system itself at different points. As I built onto the system, once I put the gauge on there, I put my finger over the fittings. There are two plastic T-fittings that look like this with push-on hose, no clamps or anything else, just push-on hose. I would keep testing it all the way out. So I tested it when I put the valve on, I tested it when I put the hose on, when I connected it to the pipe in the back, and all the way through to the end with my finger, and then the other pieces which you had. So my suggestion is build yourself a little piece like this, so that no matter what you're doing and as you're building your vacuum chucks and everything else, you can test and verify that your system is good all the way out to the end. Alternately, you can, if you have the experience, which I'm sure I will at some point in time, I will know that when I build a vacuum chuck, the steps that I need to put into play to make sure everything is working. The other reason I wanted to use the hot glue on here is I really wanted to see how it would hold, and then potentially what it would take to get this off. I think one of the things that I fully realize is that, you know, hot glue is not going to have the same long-term bonding as regular wood glue or epoxy or some other form of glue to put in there, because it's not going to seep into the wood. It basically sits on the surface. I was thinking about making a vacuum chuck whereby I had a ring for 4 inches, a ring for 3 inches, maybe a ring for 2 inches, and when I needed to change from one to the other, I could just take one off, take the hot glue off, clean up the edge, glue in another one, and go from there. I probably won't do that. But anyway, I hope that helps you out. So my suggestion is, as you start out doing this, is building it, if you go to build any type of a vacuum chuck, is to make something like this that's your test case, that you know what kind of vacuum you're going to pull through there, and put it on here and do that. So what my next step is I'm going to take about a, let's see, just a sec. Oh, there it is. I'm going to take a 3-inch PVC coupler and I'm going to put it on here. What I don't want to do is, I don't really need, this is a 4-inch coupler. It fits all the way out here to the edge. I don't have too many things that I need to vacuum chuck at the moment that I need to have at 4 inches. So on this one, I'm just going to use the 3-inch, and then I have some more plates cut, some more blanks cut here to make some more chucks, and I'll put one of these as the 4 inches, and then I'll try to do some others, because there's some other things that I still want to do. I want to work on putting my foam on the outside so that I can put something on the so if I had a piece like this, I could put it on there, vacuum chuck it, turn off the bottom, do whatever else I need to do. If I had a bowl, I could put it down into a bowl, and if I had something round like a sphere or a ball, or the top side of a bowl that I wanted to work on the finish some more, I could actually suck it onto the inside. So anyway, we'll go on to the next steps. It took me a little while to get through this. When I re-glued, when I cleaned up and re-glued the bearings onto the rods and everything else, I had to let it set for 24 hours before I tested it, and that's pretty much what I I did yesterday and part of today. So now I'm ready to take this and actually cut a 3-inch circle in this, glue it in, and go from there. Alright, I'm sure everybody knows how to glue something, but I'm just kind of going with the process here. I just found that bringing this over, leaving my vise open where it supports the faceplate itself, I have the groove cut. I have a smooth edge on this side. I took a little piece of sandpaper and smoothed it so it's going to go in like this and fit properly. So what I'm using is Loctite GO2 Go-To glue, and this is what was recommended, so this is what I'm going to use. I had some problems with this yesterday, so take my little stick, put it down in there, clean out the hole. So I can get some goop in there. See if I can get it to come through now. There we are. Screw the top back on. That's the smooth piece. Put a little more in there to make sure I get a good fill. Now all I got to do is simply do what we talk about doing all the time, and that's wait for the glue to dry. So before I do anything else with this, it'll be another 24 hours. All right. chuck number 1 in process. I'm not going to do anything with the other chuck bases and everything else until I finish making this one completely and test the system all the way through and actually able to attach a bowl and see how everything is working. But we're going to put a piece of foam up here and glue it in real good. There's several different suggestions. One of the suggestions is don't glue it on. There's another suggestion, use this big thick stuff to put on there. I don't know that I want to put the big thick stuff on there. I think what I'm going to do is simply use some double-sided tape, cut strips of that, strips of the foam, and then put it on here. But I'm not going to do any of that. I'm just going to leave this sit, and we'll come back to it tomorrow.